Everyone. Happy Tuesday.
Hello, hello.
Sorry we are late, as per usual. Try. I do try. I at least had the StreamYard up before 6:30. Progress.
Definitely.
Progress. How are you guys doing? Happy February. It's Black History Month. So, I have to break out the T'Challa. Okay, the Black Panther. Yeah. And it's also Heart Health Month. So we wanted to
Mhm.
have all of our podcasts this month are going to be focused on heart health and heart disease. This week, we are going to be discussing nutrition and heart health. And then let me look at my calendar for the rest of the month. Next week, we'll discuss exercise and heart health. We'll really, I'll be interviewing Coach Cece, our exercise physiologist, because that's her lane. But yes, we'll be discussing just the benefits of exercise as it pertains to cardiovascular health, supplements, and common prescriptions. Really, that section is going to be about educating. I think a lot of people take medications and don't know what they do or how they help their body, or how they could harm your body. And so
Mhm.
that one will be definitely a lot more educational and talking about different supplements and prescriptions used for heart health to support heart health or address heart disease. And then the last one is just going to be a summary. We're going to go over all of the things we've talked about this month. Of course, we're going to have some emphasis on how it impacts the Black community specifically. And we're just going to kind of talk about some of our favorite products for heart health at the end of the month. So it's going to be a great month full of great content. And so, Coach Cece, how
Mhm.
about you kick it off with just some of your thoughts on how you believe that our diet impacts our heart health and specifically kind of hurts our heart and has a negative impact on our heart health.
Okay. So when it comes to your nutrition, there are, caveat, again, as you guys know, we are sharing information for educational purposes. Please, there you go. Please speak with your doctor or healthcare professional when you're making decisions like for your life. So we just want to share information with you. But for dietary things that can harm your health, um, there is a lot of gray area with nutrition. There are tons and tons of diets out there. And from my perspective, I believe that there is no one diet that is the right fit for all people, where we would say, oh, put every human on this diet, and this is going to be the best diet, and it's going to keep them as heart healthy as possible. But there are some diets that are more optimal. So we'll talk about that later. But some of the things that a diet that is not optimal for heart health, that it would have in it, would be foods that are highly inflammatory. Um, and not specifically foods that are like allergenic, because there are some foods that some individuals have a higher susceptibility to allergies from, but foods that are actually inflammatory to pretty much everyone. So some foods that fall into that category would be ultra processed foods. You may have heard people talk about processed foods in the past, and processed food just means they did something to it. That means even if you get a bag of celery and carrots chopped up so that you can just eat them, that's considered a processed food. But ultra processed food has been so processed that it may not even resemble what it originally was. Like it's one of those things, like Dr. Sarah talked about last week, where your grandma, your great grandma might not recognize it. You know, people who, did not live into the 80s may not have ever seen some of these things. They really became very popular between the 80s and 90s, and now in the 2000s, these foods are very very popular. So ultra processed foods would be things like, I don't want to like give like brands or anything, but the thing that pops into my head first is Twinkies, because everybody gives Twinkies a bad rap. And you know what? If the world like is in a disaster state and the Twinkies are the only thing to survive and that's what you eat, that's what you eat. But as a regular dietary staple, something like a Twinkie is so processed. Um, I don't even actually know what food ingredients go in there. I'm assuming some flour and a little bit of milk and some sugar. But so things like that are so processed that your great grandmother, your great great grandmother would not even recognize it. Those are the types of things that are really ultra processed. Whereas, there are some foods that are moderately processed. And so they've been prepared for you, but they're still healthy. So that might be a can of soup that's made in a nice, healthy way. So those things are processed and they're okay for you. You want to read the label, look at what the ingredients are and that they didn't put a lot of extra things in there, like extra fats and sodiums that maybe you don't need. But yeah, that's my big one is the ultra processed foods. And then the secondary thing would be there are certain types of fats that are not so good for you. So trans fats, you want to read the label, but trans fats are anything that has been hydrogenated or where it's been heated so much that hydrogen molecules have become a part of the food. Dr. Sarah can explain from a scientific standpoint why that's bad. I just know it's bad because it increases inflammation.
Yeah. I'll let you finish and then I can jump in, or if you want me to.
Yeah, jump in if you want to jump in with that
Yeah,
real quick because I kind of just touched it. I don't have the science to explain it.
it's all good. Like, okay, so when we hear the word trans and cis, those have those are like directional. They describe how the atoms are arranged across the bond. That's just how it is. So trans is an issue because the it makes the fat more sticky. So it's more likely to stick together. And then it also sticks to your arteries.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you begin to build up fat on the walls of your arteries, which harden and calcify, and they can break off and cause clots and strokes, heart attacks, all of those things.
And I will share one thing. I spoke with a coworker today, and she said, her father had to go in for a procedure to clear some blockage. He was like 95% blocked, and they had to go in and kind of like use this rotor rooter. Aging myself again, because some people will be like, "What's a rotor rooter?" But kind of like going in there and spinning through. It's like a drill. But she was saying, "Oh, I didn't realize that the fat was hard. I thought it was like soft, like fat." But no, they got to go in there with like this little like it's cutting it away, like a little drill, because they can't just like gently scrape it out. It hardens, and that's what causes a lot of the problems. And then I think I was mentioning hydrogenated. If you want to explain from a scientific standpoint what that is.
Yeah, so the hydrogenated oils, it's another way to process the oils. Hydrogenated oils often don't spoil or go rancid, as well as unrefined oils. And so it's also more stable, which means it can be more shelf stable for longer. But that also means that, again, the fats become more sticky to each other and to the walls of our vasculature. And so hydrogenated oils are just even harder for our bodies to metabolize and just make it easier for our vasculature to become hardened and have hardened arteries and an increased risk of heart disease.
And so when you guys are thinking about, okay, what's going to be something that has maybe those trans fats or those hydrogenated oils in them, think about things that don't spoil at the rate that you think they should. Like when you walk to your car and you see that French fry that's been sitting in there for like 2 weeks because you took your kids to McDonald's 2 weeks ago, and that French fry doesn't have any mold.
Looks
I mean, it's
Nope.
just like
It
ready
looked
to.
like it just fell out the bag yesterday, doesn't it?
But then think about the sweet treats. Like if you bake cookies at home or if you bake bread at home, how
Yeah.
long would it last as opposed to something that you might buy at the store? If your bread hasn't spoiled in a month, it's probably not the heart healthiest bread that you could
Yeah.
have,
Yeah.
and I'm saying outside the refrigerator, like on the counter type of thing.
Yeah. Okay, so your first tip was avoid processed foods.
Yes, and not
Awesome.
necessarily just processed, but moderate to ultra processed. So, like if you're living a fast-paced lifestyle and
Mhm.
buying the carrots and celery that are already chopped up in a little package so that you'll eat them is better for you than having to
Yeah.
buy fresh carrots and prepare them.
Yes.
Minimally processed things are usually pretty good and safe to eat. It's the ultra processed or the moderately processed that are not so great.
Yeah. And we have some questions. Let's see. Twinkies. Twinkies and roaches will survive the apocalypse if nothing else does.
In dire straits,
Facts.
We're gonna eat those Twinkies. We're gonna be like, Jesus came.
Ah,
We're the only ones here. Let's eat these Twinkies.
facts, hard facts. And a good question. Are the trans fats what causes blockages with heart issues? Yes, trans fats and saturated fats. Though we are going to have a good conversation about saturated fats in a little while, but definitely trans fats are the ones that are associated with heart blockages.
Mhm.
Yeah. Awesome. So, minimally or moderately and ultra processed foods, you want to avoid those.
Mhm.
And then, did you have another one? I thought I would want to make sure I didn't
And
miss it.
then
I didn't
and
miss
then
it.
just the different types of fats.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So, when we talk about the different types of fats, how do you rate them?
Yes. So there are some fats that I consider to be very healthy fats. And it also matters how you prepare your fats. For example, and yeah, this is a big question. Okay. Um,
Sorry,
there's
I
different.
did spring it on you.
That's okay. I'm like, okay, I have like 5 million things pop in my head. But so, like, you may have heard like seed oils are not good for you. And generally, it's not necessarily the seed itself. Sometimes it is, but in general, it's the way the seed is processed to get the oil. So, if it's being chemically processed and they have to use a different chemical procedure to get the fat out of the seed or get the oil out of the seed, it's those chemicals that are probably dangerous. Or if it was made with a seed that was highly, treated with pesticides and other chemicals. So, like if you're
Yeah.
getting corn oil, canola oil, those types of things, because oftentimes they don't have organic options for those, they will probably have been sprayed with a lot of pesticides and herbicides and whatever else they need to make sure they can produce their product on a soil that's been monocropped for a long time, so it doesn't have a nice diversity of different things in the soil, like from bug life to minerals, to keep that particular plant healthy and hardy. So they have to use those different chemicals to kind of allow the plant to thrive in the first place. But the problem is that
Yeah.
those chemicals don't do well in our bodies. So that's why those oils are a little bit more dangerous. But you can get a completely healthy oil and then use it for frying something or cooking something at a high heat that then causes that oil to become hydrogenated, which is what we were just talking about. So so to answer the question with ranking the oils on their own, I prefer that people get cold pressed heart healthy oils like avocado oil. I like coconut oil, um, olive oil, things like that. And then to opt for doing them, I even like a nice, good grass fed cow butter or something like that, but
Hmm.
allow it to be minimally treated with heat. And then I can talk to you guys about which ones can tolerate heat more. So like use
Yeah.
this in heat, use this one not in heat kind of thing. Um, so yeah, so ranking the oils per se, I would say seed oils are usually not going to be great. And then oils that are not organic are going to be not super great. And then oils that are heat treated or chemically treated to extract the oil are not going to be great. So you're looking on the label for cold pressed kind of things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, when someone says, okay, what's the healthy fat? To me, a healthy fat, food wise, I think of the main three: olives, coconut, avocado. So that's olive oil, coconut oil, and obviously young coconut flesh, delicious, very
Mhm.
good for you. Um, Avocado, you can eat the avocado or have avocado oil. Those are all sources of healthy fats, healthy omega 3s. Um, then, an easy way to think about it if you're in the grocery store, a healthy fat is one that is liquid at room temperature.
Now, and sometimes coconut oil is a little shifty.
Right. Now, exactly. Now, but that's because coconut oil is a saturated fat. It's a healthy form of saturated fat. So it's mixed, unsaturated and saturated. So for there's a lot of debate about coconut oil in nutrition and in the functional health world. Some folks think that it's great, much like myself. I love coconut oil, um, but it is a saturated fat, so you can't just put it on everything. It's you still have to use it in moderation. But compared to butter, some butters, margarine, of course. Oh my God, I can't believe that's still on the shelf.
I know.
Um, you know, all of those really fats that are solid at room temperature, those are the ones that you want to avoid using. Now, I said some butters, meaning if it's, like you said, minimally processed, it came from a high quality milk, um, then that's a good quality butter that doesn't have hydrogenated oils, and it's very um, as minimally processed as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to be pretty picky with my butter. And honestly, I use some like plant based butters as well. So, like a butter made from avocado
Olive oil
oil,
or something.
coconut oil,
Mm-hmm.
olive oil. Yeah. So that's my opinion on choosing a healthy fat. Yeah. And then anything else you wanted to add about how our diet hurt our heart health?
So the last thing I didn't mention that's important to me. So these are like my big three for heart health. Um, is sugar. Sugar in and of itself, or
Mm,
like sugar and white starches, like things of that nature. Um, I don't feel that they're purely terrible, but it's what happens when the balance of how many starchy carbohydrates, like as far as like white bread, white rice, white pasta, those things. What happens in the United States, from what I can see, is that we kind of become very like, oh, I eat rice, potatoes, and corn, and
yeah.
wheat, and that's it.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of variety. So it affects, the gut microbiome and how much diversity we have. And then in addition, because a lot of people are still familiar and nutritionally based off of the previous food guide pyramid that came out maybe in the 70s. I'm not exactly
Hmm.
sure what year, but the base for that food guide pyramid was you need
Grains.
to have
Yeah.
6 to 11 servings. Like 6 to
That's
11, y'all. 6
insane.
to 11. Okay, we're not talking. And I apologize if I'm misspeaking, but I for whatever reason that
No,
stuck
I gotta
with
look
me
at
when I was a
it.
kid. I think
Is
it
that
was
the
6 to 11.
original?
The
Which one are you looking
original
for?
food guide pyramid that we would have been taught when we were in school X amount of years ago.
All
Um,
right.
but the base was carbohydrates because they believed that you needed to get a lot of starches because of some poorly done research in the past. And when I say poorly done, it's just that sometimes a researcher might have a belief, and so they will try to prove their belief instead of trying to disprove their hypothesis, if that makes sense. So if I believe that carbohydrates are the best, and if I find diets that support that, then I'm going to base my research off of that diet. And if I find a diet that doesn't support that, I'm going to just kind of ignore that data. And that's kind of, I believe, from what I've read, that's what happened with that original food guide pyramid. We weren't really, the research wasn't done in the best possible way. Don't quote me on
Hmm.
that. That's just the little
No,
bits
you were
that I've
right.
read.
6
Was
to
it
11 grain
6 to 11?
servings. That's
And think about
wild.
11 servings of carbohydrate. Like how, and we're not talking like carbohydrates like fruits and vegetables. We're talking just potatoes, rice, cereal.
So this is interesting. This is from the USDA 1992. Actually, and this is for 1992 to 1996. And it provides guidance for individuals 2 years of age and over to have 6 to 11 grain servings. That's crazy.
6 to 11 of grains. I mean, and I mean, think about how many times you eat a day, right? Say you only eat 3 meals. Say you never have snacks. How are you going to get 6 to 11 servings of the grains and cereals and still get everything else? Like you
Everything
can't get
else.
this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and this is when they started to notice, oh, we're seeing some trends for diet and weight that are not so great. We need to educate Americans. And then they totally educated us wrong. So I know
Oh
that
my
some people
gosh.
have that still in their head from back in
Yeah.
those times, and it's hard. Like if you have a habit of this is how I eat all the time, it is hard to change. Your gut microbacteria are like, we want the grains. Go ahead and eat it. They're influencing your brain, and so you just kind of do this out of like this habit. Also, it's what your body is craving, right?
Yep.
So so that's And the thing with Americans is that we don't eat a variety of grains either. So it's not like we're like people in Europe or the Mediterranean who are eating a variety of different kinds of grain. We kind of eat potatoes, corn, rice, and wheat, and we
We
eat
sure
that all the
do.
time. So yeah.
I'm
So
about
the
to
and
share
so and
this.
yeah, and so the other thing about that is so those white starches and sugar are very similar. And they do a similar thing to what the body does with fats and starches and how we store energy. Because remember, our food is energy, whether it came from a Twinkie or if it came from a piece of celery, like it's
Yeah.
energy.
Hmm.
So our body is looking to store that energy because we have not evolved tremendously from our hunter gatherer selves back in those days. So we know the body says, from historic data, I need to store carbohydrates because I might not get this very,
Yes.
very much, so I'm going to store and hang on to it. So we're still doing that with our 6 to 11 servings.
Of
Storing.
grades, exactly. So I wanted to share this. Let me know if you guys can see it. Uh,
I see it.
okay. So I found this on Pinterest and I thought, oh yeah, I have to use this. So this is these are a couple of mock-ups of very common foods that I'm sure we have eaten before. Um, and it really kind of tells you if they told the truth about what is in the product, this is what it would say. So we all know this. I don't know what the new name is, but we know the old name
Oh yeah, they changed it.
before 2020. Yeah, exactly. But if they were honest about the ingredients in this product, they would call it imitation boiled tree sap made from chemically processed corn kernels with water and aromatic compounds. And the aromatic compounds help it smell good, I guess. Needless to say, there's no like maple anything in this product.
Not one drop.
Not one. It is chemicals and sugar and high fructose corn syrup and all of that. Speaking of margarine, I can't believe it. Soybean oil, palm kernel oil, palm oil, water, salt, soy lecithin, vinegar, vitamin A, beta carotene, and natural flavors. 100%
Gotta
taste,
have your natural
Cece.
flavors because they're natural.
Exactly, it's a 100% taste and zero.
I didn't know that you could put 100% taste in there.
Friends, please just get some high quality butter, please. Please. And all of these foods have something in common, and we'll talk about it once I kind of run through these. But they cause inflammation. They're highly processed. Like when we look at this, and this might be something that you consider minimally processed, Cece, because how many of us are willing to juice our
Press
own
our own
oranges?
oranges.
Exactly, exactly. But if you can get something that's not from concentrate. Like if you don't want to press the oranges, at least go to Whole Foods and let them press it for you. And then you can still get fresh pressed orange juice. But yeah, this is 100% juice from an orange tree that was stripped of its oxygen so it could be stored for a year, but in the process lost its orangeness. So we added chemically altered orange byproducts back in just before bottling.
Because we
Fun
want you to
times.
believe it's orange juice.
Fun times, yeah. And then the last one, Betty Crocker, 3 kinds of sugar with oil. No strawberries here. Frosting. Yeah. So no strawberries in that strawberry frosting. Yeah. So
It's
when we
probably
talk
strawberry
about,
flavor.
yes, exactly, strawberry flavor, no real strawberries. So when we talk about, you know, cleaning up our diet, that's what we're talking about. Looking at the labels, really figuring out what you are eating. All right, so we have some comments in. Exactly, Vicky. If you can still buy it for $1 in this economy, what that should tell you everything you need to know about margarine. Come on, now, everything else costs $12, and that margarine is still on sale for
Yes.
99 cents. Exactly. Um, yeah, so true. Okay, so some of my thoughts of how our diet hurts our heart. All of those foods have something in common. They are common parts of the SAD diet, the standard American diet, the SAD diet. The standard American diet is high in fat and rarely good fat. It's the
Mhm.
trans fat, saturated fats. High in sugar. All of those products, the first ingredient was likely sugar. If it wasn't water, it was sugar. Um, and and sugar takes different forms in our foods. It doesn't just say sugar on the label. It says high fructose corn syrup and so many other um, words and names that is actually sugar, but kind of hidden in our food. Um, and also high salt. How
Yeah.
many of us realize that the foods that we eat that are processed, meaning they are boxed or canned, I would say less frozen. Frozen, you're more
Right.
likely to get good quality foods. But if they are boxed or canned, they tend to have a lot of salt. Salt can be used as a preservative and also to enhance flavor. But by the time you look at all of the sodium that's in the food that you're eating, you have far surpassed the maximum daily allowance
Yeah.
of sodium for sure. And all of this leads to heart disease. It leads to increased blood pressure, clogged arteries, increases your chance of having a stroke, having um, a heart attack, all of these issues. Um, Also, another way that our diet hurts our heart, not drinking enough water.
Hmm.
So, some of you may say, okay, well, how does that? I mean, I kind of get how it affects our heart, but hydration has it affects our heart in a couple of ways. The more hydrated we are, the the less thick or viscous our blood is. Our blood can freely flow throughout our body, which means our heart doesn't have to work as hard to pump as
Hmm.
much blood. Um, our tissues get what they call perfused a bit better. They get full of nice oxygenated blood a lot better. But also, when you are more hydrated, you're putting less of a strain on your kidneys because as your urine becomes more concentrated, because you're drinking less water, your kidneys have to work that much harder to filter out enough sodium and chloride and all these other ions and filter it out without losing too much because we
Hmm.
still need to pull some back in for our own well being. So that strain on your kidneys increases your blood pressure
Hmm.
because the harder your kidneys have to work, your kidneys have their own, have like a direct connection to our cardiovascular system. And so if things are kind of slowing down in the kidneys, it's also going to slow down with our blood flow. And that's going to increase our blood pressure. So that's why making sure that we're drinking enough water is so, so important. And then lastly, on this topic, um, having a bad diet. And when I say bad diet, I mean one that kind of looks very, very beige, you know, white rice, white sugar, white bread, corn, wheat. There's no color, there's no brightness and vibrancy in your food. Those foods cause inflammation. And, Cece, I had a question. Do you consider white sugar, white rice, white bread, minimal or moderately processed
Um,
or ultra processed?
I would, this is the first time I'm thinking about it, but I
Hmm.
would say that white rice is probably minimally processed, but wheat, sugar, those ones I would consider more highly to ultra. So it's like I think it's like low, moderate, high, and ultra. I think I haven't looked at the information on
Yeah,
processed foods in a little while, but yeah, because when they are, my understanding of processing white is that they're rice is that they're just taking the husk, the outside off, and then that's it.
yeah,
And because rice has a tendency towards absorbing arsenic, depending on how much rice you're eating, white rice is going to give you less arsenic than brown rice because they've kind of taken some of the outside hull off of it. So it's kind of a toss up between which one is better depending on your needs and how much rice you're eating. Um, but sugar has to be very processed to make it white. Um,
Yeah.
and wheat, the way they process wheat, there's even a phase where they use, if you're not getting it organic, they actually use glyphosate to dry it. And
Ugh.
glyphosate is one of those pesticides that's really harmful. It's one of the ones that people are getting lymphoma.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So it's kind of like glyphosate. If you can like minimize your exposure to that, obviously you can't eliminate it if you're living on the planet Earth, but you can minimize it.
Especially
Yeah,
in America.
we've really messed up with that one. But yeah, so because they do so many steps in the processing of sugar and wheat, those two I do consider to be like kind of in the higher end of
Yeah.
processing.
I consider them moderately processed, because sugar is white sugar is definitely ultra processed, because you're right, it does look different from raw sugar. But um, I think that if there are options, if there are like less refined options, then that's minimally processed.
Yeah,
Whole wheat bread is minimally processed because it's still using the entire
yeah,
wheat. Brown rice is minimally processed because it is the brown rice. It has the whole
yeah.
um, rice grain. Those sorts of things I consider minimally processed. And then if you are choosing the more processed option, then that increases the level of, I was about to make up a word, processification.
And that I agree with you because I feel like if you're getting it like in the original or almost close to the original state, I feel like then
Yeah.
that's minimally. They're just making it because how many of us are going to take some sugar cane? I don't know if any of you guys
Although
have ever worked with sugar cane
I
before.
have,
Girl, like I don't even know the amount of effort it takes to turn that into sugar. Okay.
I don't even want to think about it. But yeah, growing up is gonna sound, maybe it'll sound country, but I
It's
feel like
okay
they
because
don't grow sugar cane in the country. I
yes,
don't know.
my grandfather grew
Um,
sugar cane.
yeah, exactly. So growing up, we used to grow sugar cane, and my granddad would cut it, and we would chew
Yeah.
on pieces, and
They
yeah,
cut you a little
so
piece for you to chew on and suck on.
yeah,
And honestly, like if we
those were
just
the
did
days.
that, that is like for me as a child, that was more fun than having a piece of
Yeah,
candy. Now, a piece of candy gives you that instant sugar rush, but it was sweet, but I was chewing on it and we were
yeah,
just hanging out and it was fun. I mean,
yeah. It was good.
so yeah. But like if you're not gonna make your own sugar, because I don't know what that would entail, then that's a great way to get sugar is to buy some raw sugar.
Yeah, for sure. But I asked that because, having a diet that is similar to like the standard American diet, that's highly refined, highly processed, um, all of those foods tend to cause inflammation.
Absolutely.
And the chronic diseases like heart disease, like
Diabetes.
high cholesterol, diabetes, arthritis, even though some forms of arthritis is degenerative and kind of
Right.
associated with living for 70 whole years, putting all this pressure on your body, of course that's gonna happen. But yeah, all of these chronic diseases are associated with inflammation, and your food can either tamp down on that inflammation or feed the flames, kind of fan
Right.
the flames.
Mhm.
So having trans fats in your diet, I mean, listen, until I learned to make my own donuts, I'm finna drive by Krispy Kreme every once in a while, and that's my business. As Auntie Tab says, that's my business.
Yeah.
But that's once in a blue moon. Okay,
Right.
not all the time, every day as a regular thing. But if you can avoid trans fats, please try to at as all the costs as you can. But we also don't want it to be a source of stress.
Right.
Okay, change what you can,
Right.
identify what you can, and just continue to grow as you go along.
Yeah. Stress is inflammatory too. So it's better to
It
eat something and
is.
be happy than to be miserable. It
Yeah.
just kind of is counterproductive.
Yeah. And then some of the feedback we get is, well, some of the processed foods are fortified with vitamins. And yeah, it's fortified with like the cheapest form of vitamin they could find.
So
You
you might
know,
absorb it, maybe.
it maybe, possibly.
They
Um,
say you are what you eat, and I've heard somebody else say you are what you eat and absorb, right? So
because that's the part. Because that's the part. And often they have synthetic forms of vitamins, which makes it less bioavailable. Your body doesn't recognize it enough to say, "Oh, I know that's vitamin D. I need some of you. Come on over here. Let me absorb it." It might say, "Oh, that kind is that." No, she look a little different.
it
That ain't.
looked like
That's
her,
not.
but I
But
think she had different hair.
yeah, I'm gonna let her walk on by that. The vitamin D didn't look like that last week. Yeah, so your body is less likely to recognize it and absorb it. Okay, how about let's kind of switch gears a little bit and talk about how does diet improve our heart health? How can we flip the coin and use our diet to help our heart health? What I
Yeah.
have here is increase the best thing you could do. The first thing you could do is increasing your fiber.
Yes.
And some folks are like, okay, fiber, gut. What does that have to do with heart health? Well, adding fiber to your diet, that's going to increase your satiety or how satisfied you feel after eating. You're less likely to overeat, which means you're also less likely to eat unhealthy foods that have trans fats that can cause high cholesterol and hardened arteries, clogged arteries. Fiber is also great because it can help your body absorb, some unhealthy cholesterol, and it can get
Yes.
pooped out or absorbed and turned into healthy building blocks or energy rather than being stored as fat.
And so
So,
what you're saying is
mhm,
that instead of you absorbing that fat into your body or that cholesterol into your body, the fiber soaks it up and you poop it out.
right, 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 right. So it helps with that. Um, and so important. I mean, it helps with your gut, it helps with your heart health, and so many other things as well. Blood sugar support, all of these. So increasing fiber. Now, all of that said, I think that ties in beautifully with what you said earlier about we really only eat two grains in America: wheat and rice. Or
Mhm.
no, potatoes are like a starchy vegetable.
Potatoes is a starchy vegetable, and then the corn. We eat a lot of, but
Oh,
we're
I forget.
heavily
We
on the
love some
fructose.
corn now.
Yeah, and
Yes,
but I find that like people eat corn, but it's more that from the records that what we're getting is the high fructose corn syrup and the corn
yes,
oil. But
yes,
um, but we also do
yeah,
actually eat the corn kernel too.
yes, exactly. Yeah, we do too. Or in ultra processed popcorn.
Oh God, yeah,
Yes,
I love your
yeah,
popcorn.
exactly. But yeah, so having more fiber in our diet. So introducing new sources of grain. So farro is one of my new favorites that I've
Oh
kind
my
of
God,
kept in
it's so
rotation.
good.
It's so good, isn't it? um, bulgur, and these are also recommendations if you are not gluten sensitive or celiac. Some of these are gluten containing grains that wouldn't be appropriate for folks with celiac or who are sensitive. But if you're not, you can explore with different grains. They can add a different flavor to foods. And it's just a good way to give your gut and your microbiome some good new food to try out as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. To complement or actually spice up that bland diet, increase the variety of color in your diet.
Mhm.
I think the phrase we're all familiar with is eating the rainbow.
Not
So,
Skittles,
right, please.
not Lucky Charms.
No, 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 please don't. No. Okay. How about a red apple? Okay.
Mhm.
An orange carrot. Don't say a yellow banana. How about a yellow pepper? Okay, all of these chemicals that make these fruits and vegetables colorful, they are called polyphenols. Let me write that in there so you guys can see. Polyphenols make our food colorful.
Mhm.
There we go. So these polyphenols are the things that make strawberries red, um, carrots orange, which is because of beta carotene. But all of these are the things that also feed our good bacteria. They can help improve the integrity of our vasculature. So if you think of our veins and capillaries, um, it gives them a kind of tonifying and strengthening so they can stay strong as our heart is pumping blood throughout our body. So increasing the different colors that you eat, of course, has a variety of benefits for our overall health, but specifically for heart health, it's really great for blood pressure, for cholesterol, and so many other things as well. And then we already talked about my third one, which was choosing good fat over bad fat whenever you can. Yeah. What about you?
Um, I was going to bring up a tricky fat that we had touched on earlier, but I wanted to save for this section, and that is saturated fat. Because saturated fat has gotten a bad rap for a while. And I firmly believe that there are some people who, if they have a diet that is high in animal products, meaning meat or butter or cheese, milk, they tend to not do well. So
Mm,
there's a big push for plant-based diets. I don't think that everybody thrives on a plant-based diet, nor do I think that everybody thrives on like a carnivore type diet. I do think that some people tend to do better. And I think it has to do with their genetic background, as well as what chemical exposures and things that they may incur from certain diets because of where they live or where their food is coming from. So that's my caveat before I go into this, because there are some people who I know that tend to need to be on a more carnivore type diet in order for them to actually feel good. And so those diets are going to have higher amounts of saturated fat. So, do I think saturated fat is good? I don't know. Do I think it's bad? I do not know. What I do know is that the data is inconsistent. It does not consistently show that people on diets that are high in saturated fat or animal products consistently have higher incidences of heart disease. There are actually data that show that they have reduced risk of stroke. So it really and truly depends on the person. Um, so saturated fat from healthy animals, meaning they're grass fed, they're free range, meaning they're walking around and getting exercise. And they're eating the diet that they would naturally eat. Okay. Meaning they're not getting an animal's ultra processed diet, right? A cow on an ultra processed diet, and I'm doing this with quotes for anyone who's just listening to audio. A cow on an ultra processed diet would be eating a lot of corn and a lot of, wheat. They would be eating feed, and that would be their primary source of food. And they would be kept in a small space, and they would not be getting a lot of exercise. And if you think about, I don't know if we have a picture of this, and I don't know how to do that, but if you have seen a person who has a body that's high in body fat and low in muscle mass, then you'll see that there's a lot of fat around the tissue, and that the muscle does not look nice and healthy. It looks very like kind of thin and stringy. It's not super strong, a healthy muscle. And that same thing happens to our animals when they're fed a diet that is not their natural diet. And they're also living a lifestyle that is very sedentary, which is not their natural lifestyle. Cows roam and graze, and they eat a variety of different kinds of greens. And that is natural for them. They do not naturally just eat a bunch of corn and wheat. And corn and wheat that has been grown in not ideal situations, meaning it's probably encountering pesticides, it's probably encountering herbicides. So if you eat meat from an animal, like your meat and your dairy, from an animal like a pig or a cow or a chicken that is not eating its natural diet, then you're not getting the same quality meat. And that meat is going to be more inflammatory than a grass fed, wild, like kind of cage free animal. So saturated fat from different quality meat will have different amounts of inflammatory quality to it. So I hope that makes sense. So you have to really know where your saturated fat is coming from. Is it coming
yeah.
from a cold, a hot, what is it called, like a cold pressed coconut?
Yeah.
Or is it coming from some type of chemically extracted coconut oil that is going to be laden with other heavy things that your body is going to have to process?
Yeah.
Is it coming from a cow that had a happy wild life, or a cow who was sad in a pen, like, pardon me for saying this, but like in a pen where their feces was nearby and they had to be injected with lots of
Yeah.
antibiotics because they weren't going to be able to mount a strong immune response to anything because of their lifestyle and their diet?
Hmm.
That cow's meat is more inflammatory. That cow's
Agreed.
milk is more inflammatory. So that is where I wanted to bring up about saturated fat and making sure, like, can it be in a part of a healthy diet? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And we have a really great question. So, what's the best way to make sure that the meat you get is more organic rather than processed? Super good question. I think, okay, for me, I
Mm-hmm.
think that if you want, there's two things you could do. If you want really high quality meat, go to a local farm.
Mm-hmm.
So if you live in Charleston, um, fortunately, we're surrounded by a lot of farms. I talked about Fields Farm on Johns Island. There's Legree Farms on Johns Island as well, where you can get meat from a cow that lives in the same area code as you. You can get to meet the farmer and you can, kind of see what kind of operation they have going on. If you live in a place where you do not have any farms nearby, in my personal opinion, I think that the store that has the highest quality meat is Whole Foods. And that's because they have a lot of the data to support that. And they give their meat grades. You can get as
Mm-hmm.
high as a grade 5. And that means, honey, that cow was living, they probably lived better than you and I, to be honest with you. Okay, that cow was living its best life. Um, and all the way down to, I think, grade 3 or 2. But they actually make it a part of their values to use high quality meats and source from farmers and growers and suppliers that share similar values. So nearby farm, if possible. And number 2, Whole Foods. What about you?
I agree. I think it's really nice to be able to visit the farm and to see how the animals are treated. There's a farm near me where they let people come and pet the animals and love on them.
Cute.
And it's like, so my challenge with eating meat is that they have to be killed. So that's a thing that I'm dealing with
No.
psychologically. But I think it is nice that if that animal is going to be killed and used for meat, that we honor that animal's life while it's alive, that we treat
Yeah.
that animal with love and respect. So you can go visit these farms and see, like, oh, yeah, these cows are roaming around. They're free range. They will walk up to the fence and you can touch them, so these animals are loved. And so think about the hormones that we build up in our bodies when we're feeling loved and
Yeah.
good. And then think about the way we might feel if we're not feeling happy and we're stressed and in this high negative lifestyle. I
Yeah.
think the meat itself, because when I was very heavily eating meat, it tasted different when I got that grade 5 meat from Whole Foods, or if I just
Mm-hmm.
went to the regular corner grocery store and just got whatever they had. Like, you could taste the difference. Like, you could say,
Yeah.
this cow had a good life. Mm. So I think that's
Exactly.
really important. And the same thing, even with your eggs, when you're buying eggs, you have to think about that because, well,
Yeah.
you don't have to think about it, but I think about it because I want to know that my chicken was rooting around and eating worms and stuff and not just eating corn all the time. Like, chickens are omnivores. They
They
eat
are. Yeah.
needles and
So
bugs and stuff.
I don't know if they have this brand up there, Vital Farms.
Haven't heard of it.
So they're expensive, but they're so worth it. But every month they pick a chicken of the month, and she's so cute. And it'll be like, look at that Carolina, meet Carolina. She's like this age, and it's just cute. So you see, like, okay, they really actually care about these animals, and it's not just about having as many eggs as possible. They actually care about the animal's quality of life, and that is important.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, for the sake of time, I won't spend too much time on this last piece, but I wanted to spend some time answering a common question that we get asked is, okay, well, how should we be eating to maintain a healthy heart
Mhm.
and have good heart health? And I had to go with the most researched
Yeah.
diet out there, which is the Mediterranean diet. And so I figured we could briefly kind of talk about the Mediterranean diet, what it entails, and kind of why not only do we like it, but what the research has said
Yes.
about the Mediterranean diet and its impact on heart health. So, do you want to start, or you want me to?
I don't mind jumping in because I have a thought I want to share before I forget it.
Story of my life, girl. Go ahead.
Now, one really great thing about the Mediterranean diet is that they don't tend to use a ton of salt. And
Yeah.
as it's Black History Month and we're talking about heart health this month, people of color, this is Black people, I think also natives, but really, really heavily with Black people in America, at least, we do not do well with high sodium as a general.
Yeah.
So, of course, there's going to be some people who are fine with it, but generally, we do not tolerate a lot of sodium without it affecting our blood pressure.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So with the Mediterranean diet, they use lots of herbs and spices. So you get a lot of flavor in your food without having to pick up the salt shaker to make it taste good. So I really love that that's part of their diet. And, culinary herbs like basil, cilantro, using paprika and things like that. Those things can give you a lot of vitamin boosts and antioxidant boosts. So it's giving yourself a lot of nutritional bang with a little bit of bucks.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I really like
Exactly.
the Mediterranean diet does that.
Yeah, me too. Okay, so the Mediterranean diet. So if you think about the Mediterranean, you're thinking of Greece, beautiful area, but think about the way that they eat. So it's on the coast, of course, so you're going to have a lot of really healthy, fresh seafood, particularly fish that are high in good fat.
Hmm.
So maybe some salmon. You're also going to have olives. So olives, olive oil, they cook with olive oil rather than butter or um, God forbid, Pam or something like that. um, and then it's also, let me get my notes so I can tell you exactly what's in it. Here
Yeah.
we go. All right. So, of course, we have our vegetables and fruits. So, really, what I love about the Mediterranean diet is that it focuses on seasonal eating, eating with
Yes.
the seasons. I think we talked about this a couple of weeks ago when my husband was like, yeah, I want to go to the grocery store and
Yes.
get some cherries and plums. And I'm like, well, baby, it's January. Like,
Where
where
are
are you
you getting
getting
those of them
cherries
from?
at? Like, right. So you have to eat with the seasons, even though it may be in your grocery store. It came from far, far away. So you want to eat with what is seasonal. It's going to be higher in vitamins and minerals, and just way more healthy and taste a lot better. Um, but you can also incorporate frozen and canned veggies that are low in sodium as well. Um, with fruit, they really rely on it as like nature's candy. So getting a good source of energy, good fiber as well. And that way you don't have to worry about adding any added sugars in your diet when you are consuming fruit. But it also has nuts and seeds. So not just peanuts, but walnuts, almonds, cashews. I love flax. Flaxseed is really high in omega 3s, um, including pine nuts, which is rich in selenium, which is an important mineral, along with pumpkin seeds and sunflower seeds. Um, but it also has healthy oils, beans, and legumes. You mentioned herbs and spices, and then grains as well. So the greens also included like barley, bulgur, couscous, oats, and then of course they included like pasta, quinoa, and rice. So this diet has been, like I said, the most researched diet. It has been shown to reduce risk of heart attack, stroke, and general cardiovascular disease. It's been shown to reduce inflammatory biomarkers, so your body isn't signaling that it's under a lot of inflammation. Um, and then one cool thing that everyone talks about when they are talking about the Mediterranean diet is, they don't shy away from their red wine, and that's true. I need a glass of red wine every evening. Maybe not every evening. Let's take it. let's simmer down a bit. But the red wine has resveratrol.
Hmm.
Resveratrol is a polyphenol that we talked about earlier that makes the grapes a beautiful red or purple. And so that resveratrol that's in the red wine is good for our heart and our vasculature. Yeah. Anything else you wanted to share about the Mediterranean diet?
Yeah, I was going to say now the Mediterranean region, it's a more of a tropical area, so they do
Yeah.
have different things available than what we would have. But like Dr. Sarah said, when you're buying things that are frozen, it's a little bit better than buying things that are in the and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Sarah.
Mhm.
My personal opinion, when you want to eat seasonally, now I don't care if you buy things that are out of season, have fun with it, because I think it's important to get those foods in anyway.
Yeah.
And I would rather see you do that than to just not eat it, say it's out of season, and then miss
Agreed.
out on some nutrients.
Yeah.
But Dr. Sarah was talking about frozen, and frozen is really good because a lot of times they freeze it, shortly after they pick it, so it stays very fresh. So it's kind of like the way to save yourself if you're not able to get fresh produce, because depending on where
Yeah.
you live, one thing Dr. Sarah and I talked about prior to today's show was that there are a lot of people in food deserts. And so they're not getting access to fresh fruits and vegetables all the time. So if you can get frozen things that you can store in a deep freezer or in your freezer, that can help you to get these different polyphenols from all these colorful foods, because you're able to keep it in the freezer. And also, if you're one of those people like me, but I'm doing better, I'm recovering, who buys fresh produce and you swear you're going to eat it and then you're throwing it out by the end of the week because it's boiled. Um, Buying the frozen things can be a little bit of a
Yes.
better option. So you can still, like, you don't have to live in the tropics to get that Mediterranean, the benefits of having things that are more fresh in that Mediterranean way, because the frozen foods are often frozen shortly after picking.
Yeah.
And then if you're living a vegetarian lifestyle, depending on the time of year, and depending on the culture, because there's like Moroccans, and then there's, I feel like Italy and all that's kind of in that
Yep.
region. So the
Yeah.
diets are so vast. The spices are very similar, but they may use
Yeah.
one spice more heavily in one region than others. But the foods that they eat are so vastly different, that oh, I'm losing my train of thought on this, and I was so excited. Oh, it was because I was talking about the meats. Some people who maintain a Mediterranean diet have a little bit of a lower intake of meat, so it's more of a vegetarian style
Yeah.
diet. So
Yeah.
that being the case, there's a big, broad array of legumes that they eat. So lots of different types of beans. So it's not like you just always eat kidney beans or black beans. You are eating garbanzo beans and lentils and just a wide array of different legumes that are good for you. And maybe there's not as much red meat, but the Mediterranean diet is so similar to the anti-inflammatory diet, that it also tends to be more plant-based.
Yeah.
So those are just my only thoughts to share.
Awesome. And then this one comment for one of my best friends. Hey, girl. Um, she mentioned that she only uses olive oil when cooking. And this reminded me that you wanted to share a little bit about the temperatures of the oils,
Yes,
which one to
yes.
choose for high heat, low heat, no heat if you're doing salad dressings, that sort of thing.
Yes, I'll be quick. I can get a little long-winded. So, when you are cooking things that are going to require high heat, you want to use something that has a high gas point. So, if you do a quick Google search, like what's the gas point of this oil, like coconut oil can be heated very high before it becomes hydrogenated. So, that can be a really good oil to use when you're cooking something that's cooked at a high temperature. Olive oil actually is better used cold. I do remember when I first started getting into health, and I was like, let me fry this chicken up in this olive oil. And then I realized the gas point is so high, or the gas point is lower for olive oil. So like it was actually causing the meat to absorb more oil.
Oh,
So, because
yeah.
the more time it spends in there, and so
Yeah.
you want your grease really hot when you're frying, right? So that you don't have to leave the food in the oil very long. So that was a mistake I had made when I was in the beginning of learning about how to eat more
Yeah.
healthy. And I was like, I'm not going to give up my fried chicken, but I'll fry it in olive oil, which was kind of crazy. Now, I was in college, so y'all forgive me for that. But
Oh,
yes, so
that's
when
on
you're
par for our college experience. Yes, that's when you're supposed to. Because your mama would be very upset if you tried to
oh my god, olive
fry
oil
her
is
chicken in her olive
expensive,
oil.
and then
Yeah,
the color
no.
doesn't come out right either. So
No,
just don't do
you've
it.
been in
It
a
wasn't a
lot
good
of
look.
yes.
But if you're going to use olive oil, what I prefer to do is use a broth for cooking the food. So if it's like a vegetable, cook it in the broth first so that it doesn't stick to the pan, or even just water. But the broth gives it more flavor. And then when you get done cooking it and you've turned the heat off or removed it from the heat, either or, even just turning the heat off and adding the olive oil into the food after that and mixing it in helps you keep a lot of those natural benefits from the olive oil because it's better cold. Um, I'm trying to think of if there's any.
Grapeseed.
I hate to say it, but like if you're going to fry, vegetable and corn oil probably are your
Yeah.
better options. It's just
Or
hard to find those.
avocado.
Yeah, or avocado.
Mhm.
Now, Cashew avocado is it's expensive.
Very, very, okay, very.
So yeah, so the better option is to try to air fry if you have an air fryer,
Mhm.
or do less frying if possible. But those are my different, and I can put something up later on as a comment about the oils.
Yeah. I would also say that um, for me, if you're cooking like with a wok, you can absolutely use avocado oil.
Yeah,
If you're
yeah,
gonna
because it gives
deep
a little bit.
fry, girl, just go ahead and get that vegetable oil because you shouldn't be deep frying anyway. But if
Right,
you're
like
going to do it the right way. Okay.
deep frying is a part of our heritage and our
Yes, it
culture.
is. It is.
So if you do it once in a while, do it, but like do always think about what am I doing more of? They talk about the
Yeah,
80-20 rule.
exactly.
And
Yes.
I have a friend who lost tons of weight when we were in college. Well, she lost it actually before we got to college, and then she showed me what she was doing. And she would fry her food up, but then she would pat it dry with a paper towel. You have
Hmm.
no idea how much grease, like not just, I learned to fry it and set it on the paper towel and let it dry,
Yeah.
but she was
And pat
patting
the
the
top.
grease off
Yeah.
of it. And she ate whatever she wanted, but she lost a ton of weight just because she removed, like, I don't know, 75% of the grease. That's an arbitrary number. But the,
Right.
the paper towel was so greasy. I was like, oh my God, like, and I would have eaten all of that grease.
Every last bit. Every last bit. Well, thank you all for joining us tonight. It was a wonderful conversation. Please don't forget, where is it? To subscribe, okay?
Yes.
Rate our podcast wherever you get our podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, hey girl, hey friend. Please subscribe, comment, like, share, all those things. And if you enjoyed this podcast and want more support from myself or Coach Cece, please visit lsfamilywellness.com to book a free discovery call with either one of us. And we will see you guys next week on the Black Girl's Guide to Natural Medicine. Bye, everybody.
Bye.